Good afternoon. We are delighted today to be joined by Karen Harvey-Cooke from Cardiff University, who has a wealth of experience working with staff networks and is going to share with us some of her insights and the knowledge that she has gained through that work. So I'll pass over to you, Karen, to provide a little bit more detail there.
Thank you for the invitation. It's lovely to be able to spend some time in our current strange circumstances to have a chat about things that feel a bit more normal. So I'm based at Cardiff University. I'm an organisational and staff development manager in human resources. So for those people who may not be familiar with that type of job title, the team that I'm part of, we have responsibility for employee engagement, but also equality, diversity and inclusion for staff. But outside of that, and I suppose my real passion is I've been chair of our staff LGBT plus network, Enfys, which is Welsh for Rainbow, for the past 9-10 years. And I'm really committed to supporting and encouraging other staff networks to thrive and to flourish. And I think particularly at the current time, that's more important than ever.
Super. Thanks so much for that, Karen. And so my first question would be, what is the biggest change that you've experienced recently with the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic? And what have you done to adjust to that change?
So I think for everybody, this has been something that has impacted in so many different ways. So I think if I talk first of all about what we've done from a network point of view, and then I'll probably share a little bit about from an individual point of view, the impact that that's had. I think that from my perspective, one of the really important things in the current climate for the network has been trying to maintain a bit of normality. So continuing to communicate, but measuring that quite carefully, because I think now that everybody's moved to a very electronic way of working, the one thing that I think as a network we want to make sure we get the balance right with is not too much electronic communication, so not bombarding people too often with emails. And I think that can sometimes be the tendency, is that at a very difficult time you want to reach out to people, but you've got to balance that with everything else that everybody's going to be receiving. In any one day it can be emails from school for homework for kids, it could be emails from team members, emails from line managers, emails from everybody else who wants to get in contact. So there's a really important message there around just getting the contact right. So one of the first things that we did was we emailed out to our network and we pointed them in the direction of both internal and external support mechanisms that were available both locally and nationally, so that people had the opportunity to get that support in any way that we could. We told them the network was going to be there throughout this whole period, that we'd be keeping a check on emails, we've got our social media accounts, and we had some really nice emails back to that. But what was really nice was we had some of our allies come back and say, if there's anything that we can do to support, then just let us know. And we've also tried to keep some of the broader communication going as well. So, quite a number of people who are watching this, I'm sure, will be aware that, this week was Lesbian Day Visibility. So one of the things that we did last week was we made sure there was an article in our internal newsletter featuring a colleague from another organisation in South Wales, just to, again, try and keep that normality going in, such an extraordinary time. So that's been probably where we've gone from a network point of view, to try and keep that normality going. From an individual point of view, and again, I'm sure this will resonate with people, I am an individual who likes routine. I like the routine of going into work. Prior to this, I've probably never really worked a lot from home, so this has been quite a change. My role is a lot about working and seeing people. It's about, journeying around our campus, meeting different teams, meeting people, and I like that human interaction. And I think we all know it isn't the same over video, and it's even more exhausting over video. So I think what I've tried to do, and what we've tried to do at home, is to try and create that sense of routine. I'll be really honest, I think I've got a lot better at taking a lunch break since I've been working from home. That's not something I'm great at in work. And also, which my wife and my friends think is hilarious, I'm now doing half an hour of yoga at the end of the day as well, which is a sentence I never thought would come out of my mouth. But it creates that line of, that's the end of the working day, and now this is home. And actually, that's been incredibly useful, and fingers crossed I can keep it going when we're back to some sense of normality.
Super stuff. Thank you, Karen. And I suppose building upon that, for leaders who are seeking to continue fostering diversity and inclusion as this changes going ahead, what words of advice would you offer them?
I think one of the conversations that we've been having, and it's really struck me how this highlights sometimes the lack of diversity that we don't have in organisations. You know, the vast majority of organisations will have implemented some kind of major incident response to this. So they will have had different, you know, governance teams and groups who've been brought together to respond to this. And if your organisation, you know, isn't as diverse as it could be, and, you know, we found this as a university, you need key roles around those tables, and actually quite often those key roles can be the same demographic of people. So I think one of the things that we've reflected on is the importance of getting diversity around that table when some of these really key decisions are being made. And it's not that people are making those decisions and deliberately not thinking of certain groups, but inevitably, if you don't have that experience around the table, you won't get that sense of what may matter for a certain group that perhaps doesn't even feature for another group of staff. So looking at those groups and leaders looking at those groups that are making those decisions and thinking, right, how do we get that diversity around that table? So the decisions we make now, but the decisions we continue to make over the next, you know, however long we're going to be in this situation, reflect the experience of everybody in our organisation. And I think there's a real learning point there that not only lasts while we're going through this period of time, but, you know, I think all of us would like to hope that then continues afterwards. And when we're making those big decisions, we think, well, actually, who's around that table? Because for some of our groups, you know, our disabled staff, you know, our BAME staff, and there's been lots in the press around the experience of the BAME community. What does that mean for them? What does this current scenario mean for them? And, you know, long may that continue after we come out of this circumstance. So look at who you've got around making some of those key decisions.
Mm-hmm. Super stuff. Thank you, Karen. And I suppose to build upon that, is there any advice that you could offer for employees maybe at lower levels of the organisation who also would like to further the cause of inclusivity in their workplace?
Yeah, I mentioned earlier on that one of the things that I think I'd found really encouraging was the number of our allies who'd got in touch and said, is there anything that we can do? That allyship in this climate becomes even more important. Mm-hmm. I think for organisations and staff at every level in organisations, think about the people in your team. Think about their, you know, current living experience. Think about things that may be impacting them in a way that aren't necessarily impacting you. I think people looking at local charities and national charities who are still trying to support groups through this time. You know, I think about our trans community. I think about people who may be in vulnerable situations where, you know, actually coming to work gives them an escape and a release from what may be a really difficult home situation. I've spent a bit of time over the past couple of weeks checking in with some of our student LGBT plus leaders and just saying, is the student community okay? You know, does anybody need anything? Because people may be, you know, finding themselves in situations now 24/7 that are incredibly difficult. So, you know, reaching out to people, making people aware of support mechanisms that are available locally. And obviously, you know, I recognise that for many people, they can be in, you know, a difficult position financially at this time. But if you are able to offer any kind of support, whether that be financially or whether that be volunteering to local charities, and, you know, some of my passions inevitably are around LGBT plus, but any local charity who, you know, at the moment is reaching out to vulnerable groups, and anybody can do that. That doesn't need to be somebody who's in a senior position. You know, the difference that you can make just from reaching out is huge. You know, our homeless population, I think particularly our LGBT homeless population at the moment, you know, all of those groups I think about and I think, right, you know, what can we all do together? One of the things that we have in South Wales is our we have a forum which is a network of LGBT network chairs, and we're meeting on the 15th of May, and I know that's going to be one of the things that we'll be talking about is what can we do in our local environment to try and help and support groups that we know could be struggling through this time. So reaching out is something that anybody can do.
Super stuff. Thank you, Karen. And in a slight gear shift, I was wondering more broadly around what is it about staff networks that originally engaged you, or how did your engagement come about?
So I had probably about 10, 11 years ago, a really good friend of mine who worked for the university, who actually now is working for a university in Australia. And it was quite an interesting situation because they basically said to me, I've been co-chairing our staff LGBT plus network and I've got a new job and you're going to take over. To which I went, oh, am I? So I'd be lying if I said it was planned, but I quite often, and I'm still in touch with my friend who's in Australia now, I quite often reflect with them that it was whatever they saw in me, I hugely appreciated, because it's been such a rich experience, and it's been such a joy just to be able to do just even a little small bit to support other people. It's a different mechanism. It's not like, and I say this as a member of staff in HR, it's not like going to somebody in HR. It's not like a conversation with your line manager. It's about being in touch with people who just inherently understand what your experience is. And there's something so rich and valuable about that. You know, it's that, you know, they can be exhausting as well. You know, it's not all glowing. You know, there are times when I've been in, you know, supermarkets at 9 o'clock at night the day before an event thinking, why am I here doing this at this time? But the good far outweighs anything that can sometimes feel a bit trying. You know, and when you have staff and colleagues who say to you, you know, I couldn't have done this, or, you know, I wouldn't have been able to come out, or I couldn't have gone through, you know, my gender transition if it weren't for the staff network, then you know that you're making a difference, and that's a hugely valuable thing to be part of.
Super. Thanks so much for your time today, Karen, and for your insights. I've no doubt that they'll prove really useful, and it's been a pleasure. So thanks.
Thank you very much. And, you know, and to everybody, just stay safe, and remember, this isn't about learning great big massive new life skills. This is just getting through this period of time. So, you know, don't put any pressure on yourselves. Just, you know, continue doing what you're doing, because it'll be amazing no matter what.